So, Rebecca, we have a lot of emails here about parenting, and I thought you'd be the perfect person to talk with about this. What do you say we read those emails and answer them? What do you say?
And cry just a little bit.
So this first email is from listener Minnie Moon. They say, should people with severe trauma and psychological issues be recommended to not have children to avoid causing potential trauma to their children? Dr. Honda, you often discuss how childhood trauma is caused by parents with their own trauma. So I'm wondering if people with severe trauma should postpone having kids until they have recovered or trained how to cope. If you have a client with a severe problem and you know they have young kids, what advice would you recommend as a preventative, proactive action to protect the kids at their home? Rebecca, what do you think?
Well, if people with severe trauma weren't allowed to have children, there would be no children. So.
Right. That was my first thing, was like, everyone has relational traumas that interfere with their ability to be, quote unquote, perfect parent. Yeah.
But if you can put aside your own issues enough to be present for your child, so one of the ways to do that is to read books with your kid, or enjoy music with your kid, or move around in space with your kid, or take a walk, or when they're old enough, enjoy new foods with them. Like if you can repair relationally with your child, it's actually really healing and wonderful. And
making up for mistakes you might have made earlier in the day or something.
Yeah, or having the experiences that you didn't have as a kid. I mean, I can think of 100, things that I do that my son probably doesn't even notice, like let them wear whatever they want to holidays, which is very reparative, as opposed to in my childhood, it was, no white after Labor Day, no tennis shoes, like just a lot of weird random rules that seemed really stupid. So I think there are many, many ways to be present for your child. That being said, it's not easy. And there are people who are really traumatized by parenting. There's a Facebook group out there for highly sensitive parents. And that's always really interesting for me to read about how people there are just really triggered by their kids. Also, we're not supposed to parent all by ourselves. We're supposed to parent in community. So if you know you have a trauma history and you may get triggered, just make sure there's a lot of people around. Friends, family, parent support.
Yeah,
folks.
I find that this notion has been slightly understood intellectually, but not practiced by mainstream American parents, where they believe, or they have a lifestyle that they essentially do 100% of the parenting alone. And that is not how we were designed. We were designed to have your siblings, your parents, your friends, other parents just happen to be around to pay attention, play with the kid, make sure the kid is safe, take over when you're having a bad day, take over when you are taking care of another younger child, for example. And this notion of just like, well, it's all on me is absurd, and of course takes its toll.
And that makes for people who are in a real bad place. I mean, it's usually the women I work with who are single moms who come in just at the end of the rope and so angry at their children. And really, when we start picking it apart, it's how many years they've done everything by themselves.
Yeah. And I find that it's almost like a pseudo gaslighting experience for parents, because they live solely emotionally and intellectually in the child's world, which is good to really pay attention to the child and live with the child. But you can get a really weird mindset, because the child, especially if there's some struggle, will often be upset with you and say, I can't believe you're doing this to me, and slam the door or something. And if you have no one to turn to in that moment and go, what's going on? And your partner or your friend goes like, I don't know. That teen's having a thing. Who knows? Hormones, Snapchat. I don't know what happened there.
Too much chocolate milk. Who knows what's happening?
Yeah, and then you can laugh and go, "Oh, it's not me. This is what, children are going to children sometimes." Whereas if you don't have that immediate kind of reflection or check-in, you just go like, my life is crap. Everything is crap. This world is crap. This family is crap. I am crap. You just have no perspective, right? So with you, Rebecca, you went through a lot growing up. How did that play out with your parenting?
Well, I remember when my son was really little, like 3 or 4, and he yelled at me. And he said, "You're the worst mommy in the world." And this actually wasn't from my own childhood. This was from my work as a therapist. It just came out really naturally and really calmly. I said, I'm not the worst mommy in the world. The worst mommies in the world burn their children. And he just like stopped in his tracks and stared at me. And I nodded, yeah. And I was like, oops, sorry I said that. But, the kids will say all kinds of things, and you just really have to try and not take them personally. I would say that's the difference of how I've been as a parent, as opposed to my mother, who was really like, you are doing this to make me feel bad. And I think what's so hard with kids is they're just doing that, and you happen to be there. They would be doing that whether you were there or not.
Right.
And that's why big communities have aunties, and in most cultures, kids have jobs really young.
Things to do that are
outside the house.
Yeah, give them something to occupy their time. Yeah. Did you work when you were young?
I definitely did babysitting, and I worked, at like delis and restaurants out of high school.
I pretty much always worked from, even before I had a social security card, I worked like under the table as a busboy at a Chinese restaurant at the age of 13. I think now they just give you a social security number when you're born or something, but back then, apparently you got it when you started working. And I feel like I was always working some really awful job. You remember Ernst? Wait, did you have Ernst?
Oh, yes.
Okay. It's like Lowe's or Home Depot. I worked there as a cashier with another founder of this podcast, Lita. Anyway, we'd send notes to each other.
Like paper notes.
And to this day, when I go into a Lowe's or a Home Depot, the nursery, there's this smell. I think it's the fertilizer or something. It just transports me back to, 17 when I worked at Anyway, well, are you saying that if you were to be triggered by your son throughout, he's how old, 17, 18 now? That if he were to be angry at you or lash out at you verbally, that the why in the road for you is, well, if I go with my trauma, I'm going to take this personally. I'm going to, get real upset and maybe lash out back at him, but I'm going to rise above the trauma and do this other thing. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, I love the phrase that you have to be emotionally regulated to regulate someone else. And so if my kid is escalating, it's my job to stay calm. And if I can't stay calm, I mean, obviously we have skirmishes all the time and everybody else screams. But I remember at some point, it used to be like they got a minute for every year they were of timeout when they were bad. So if they were 3, it was a 3-minute timeout. And I remember at some point saying, like, I think mommy should get the same thing. So if I'm 45, I'm going to take a 45-minute timeout. And I'll see you later. I mean, there's this enmeshment in current parenting culture, which is really hard. I mean, I think about it with how much identity comes from the kids' sports and the kids' successes. And I'm about to head into hearing where everybody's kid went to college, and that's going to be great. But
meaning that in our day, our parents had identities outside of us.
Oh, yeah. I mean, my mom barely had an identity as a mother. You know, she was a poet and a sponsor of the arts. You could say
in the 70s and 80s, it had swung a little too far in that direction. You know, we were the latchkey generation. I mean, my mom was always home and always there. So we literally didn't even, can you believe this? We didn't even have a key to our door because we just never locked it, even when we left for the house. But yeah, I never had a house key, so I was never a latchkey kid, but a lot of us were in our generation, right? But anyway, yeah. Well, for you, when you do have those tough moments, does Beth help?
Sure, but she is often more escalated than me.
Oh.
She comes from a real authoritarian household. And so the idea that a kid would talk back is really overwhelming for her. And she has to sort it out in a minute. And I'm like, take a break. Walk away. He's clearly flooded and just spouting toxicity. You know, come on back later.
Yeah.
Like, this doesn't have to get solved right now. And I think with kids, especially with ADHD, it's hard to see. Like, I can see it because of the work I do, that he's completely flooded and not absorbing information. And it's amazing for me to watch other people who can't see it and they have to finish their speech. And I always look at them and think, like, why do you have to keep talking? Why can't you stop talking?
Yeah. Well, I find that for authoritarian-oriented parents, there's this notion, this value, or I don't know, of this is unacceptable. This will not stand. And I am going to make it not stand. And I have worked with so many parents to try to break them of that mentality. You know, it's wonderful that you care about your child and want your child to not be an a-hole, and you want your child to not treat other people poorly, even you. You're trying to raise your kid right, but your nuclear grip on this thing called unacceptable behavior is driving your family down the tubes. Like, you just got to let go of that and just say, one, like you're saying, I can still make this unacceptable later. I don't need to make it unacceptable now. You know what I mean?
Or there can still be consequences now. Like, if you're behaving like that, you're not doing fun X thing. I mean, I'm not getting trampled all over, but I'm also not asking for compliance, like immediate compliance, which I think is really hard for people who like their voices to have perfect authority in the moment.
Well, I think it's an anxiety also. I think it's an anxiety of, if I let this go, then he'll always do this. You know, if I don't put a kibosh on this right now, it's just setting a precedent that he's going to always, I need to say, this is not okay now. And you know, again, that's a good value, but there's sort of a cost benefit analysis of, and an understanding of a child's, I don't know, children are going to children, as I say, you know, and I find that some people, maybe if they were raised a little too fast or something, they have this notion that, like, a 13-year-old should be able to act like an adult. And I'm like, 13-year-old, or I know, you know, I might say to the parent, I know you weren't allowed to be 13 when you were 13, but you got to let your 13-year-old be 13. Doesn't mean that you just give up and it's just like no rules, but understand in the same way that you understand, like, a 4-year-old is going to have a fit every now and then and have a temper tantrum, because that's what 4-year-olds do. And
I don't know if you've seen the Explained, I think it's on Netflix, the Explained series. Their Teenage Brain is one of the segments, and it's really good at talking about how the frontal cortex is offline.
Well, it's not
fully developed, right? You're way more emotional than you've been at other points in your life, that the inner critics are screaming as loud as they possibly can, and at the same time you're specializing in what you're interested in. And that's the other thing I would say, is that if you've been traumatized as a kid, probably your family didn't notice the little things that you were interested in and encouraging them. And that's been a big difference in my household than when I grew up. It's like, if my kid loves cars, that's all we talk about.
Yeah. He's really into cars.
Yeah. The new Car and Driver comes out. It's out at the dinner table. We're reading articles aloud. We're comparing. We're thinking about things. Like, we are...
Did this influence your decision to buy a new fancy car like you did recently? A couple times ago when Rebecca came over to my house, she's like, you got to come out here and check out my new car. It has like one of those all-car moonroofs or sunroof. It goes like into the back seat. It looks like a spaceship on the inside. It's got all these...
It's got the big screen. It's got basically an iPad in the front console.
Yeah. It's a Subaru, right?
No, it's a Volvo.
Oh, Volvo, right.
All over the car, these little Volvo insignias on the leather and in other places, so that you know the opulence, the luxury.
The Europeanness.
The story, our car that I love, our Audi A3, started surging at stoplights. So you'd be stopped and it would keep jerking forward.
Oh,
and
my God.
It was terrifying.
Did you almost run over pedestrians?
I mean, it was just like, so then you like get it out of the car, you just turn it off, got it towed. And the first level of fixing...
Meaning that your foot's on the brake, but it's surging.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
So we had not planned to buy a new car at all. We thought this Audi A3 was going to last us till the end of time. And then this terrifying thing happened. We suddenly we're down to one car, which is in Seattle, just kind of hard. And we started looking around, and that car, I told you, had been sitting in somebody's driveway all of the pandemic. So it was kind of a steal. That's why we have a new fancy car. So we got a total deal.
What did he think about was he into the purchase, or is it?
Oh my God. He loves that car. He loves to drive it. And that car is so fancy that it knows the different fobs. And so it knows that it's you, and it adjusts the seat just for you.
Yeah. That I would appreciate, because back in the day, like when Stacy and I would share a car, when it was just that lever underneath the seat where you could just kind of click.
There's a massive size difference between the two of you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's pretty tall, but I'm, taller. But it was easier to kind of move the seat quickly. Now you got to use that electric system, and it's like,
yeah.
And so, yeah, it'd be nice if my car had that fanciness. But anyway.
Well, let me just say, my son is a foot taller than me, so it's really nice that it's like, oh, it's you.
Totally. Yeah, I could imagine that would be pretty. So, Mini Moon, what I would say to your question of, should people who have significant trauma histories avoid having children, or what would they do? It is an important question. I would never say they shouldn't have kids. That's ridiculous. But I think everyone, regardless of the amount of traumas they've gone through, is what a wonderful world it would be if everyone around the age of, 18 to 25, before they even started dating seriously, went to therapy or did some kind of personal journey to really discover truly what their issues are and what their traumas are, and then started working on them, healing, and figured out how that would affect their parenting and how it would affect their mate choice, so that they made healthier mate selections and parented in a less harmful way.
And if you're interested in how moving from a couple, if you're choosing to parent in that way, to bringing a child into that scenario is going to trigger all your issues at once while it's simultaneously triggering all your partner's issues, Gottman has a book called Bringing Baby Home, which is an excellent look at why that first year of parenting is so difficult as everybody's identities are changing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, John Gottman and team, Julie, his wife, are associated a lot with couples therapy that I'll often talk about, but they also have a lot of research and really great down-to-earth research-based recommendations around parenting. Let's switch subjects here. Rebecca, you have been working on, if anyone follows you on Instagram knows, tarot cards. Am I saying that word right?
Yeah, I think it's
tarot.
Tarot.
I think I say tarot, and people are like, "That's weird sounding." So then I started saying tarot. I think maybe it's from my French class in high school. I say tarot.
Well, tarot was very popular in France, so maybe we should say the French.
Isn't it a French word? It seems like a French word.
I should know this for my 8-hour presentation.
So you give a presentation on tarot cards.
I have a workshop called Tarot and Therapy, Intuition, and something else. And we look at the history of tarot, and then people make 6 of their own tarot cards using my 20 years of art therapy knowledge to guide them. And
you now have been working with a publisher, and you have actually published your own tarot cards that people can use. They're and I'm looking at them right now, and I've seen a lot of these paintings on Instagram. People can follow you at R text, right? Mm-hmm. The letter R and text. Mm-hmm. And do these follow the same system of tarot?
Yeah, so there's the Smith Wyatt deck, which is very well known, and many current decks follow that deck as what the card should look like. That deck is definitely an inspiration for me, and if you're familiar with that deck, you'll see which cards pull from that. And some of these are just my own emotional response to, I don't think the Fool should be a whistling guy. I think the Fool should be a powerful woman in a lightning storm, because that's how the beginning of my journeys feel. So there's a lot of artistic licenses, 78 cards. You'll find that like some have their own personalities, and some. So when I got the deck, a friend of mine said, "Oh, you should pull a card right away." And so the card I pulled was the 4 of Swords, which is really interesting because that's a card I had to research a lot. It's not a card I have a lot of experience with. And then I posted in one of my favorite witchy Facebook, what do people think about this? And people's interpretations were like right on. Like, you've put a lot into this project and now you get to rest. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting, because I did spend 4 years trying to do this. And it's not even, I didn't even find a publisher. I found a printer. So it's this group called Shuffled Ink in Florida, and they will produce a deck for you. They're just set up, because, printing is its own separate own.
Right.
They have a box maker and a card cutter and a shrink wrapper.
It's real professional. And so people can buy this, on Amazon or something?
I'm doing it a live sale often. Do you follow any people that sell stuff only when they've got it online?
What do you mean? Like today I'm selling and tomorrow I'm not?
Yes. So I guess it was taken from LuLaRoe, but I learned about it from the Plus Bus in LA, which is they just have live sales whenever they have stuff. And then you message them your email and your address, and they send you an invoice. And when the invoice is paid, they send you out the whatever you ordered. So what this allows me to do is not have to have a ton of stock on hand. And when I have time and energy, like I just did last night. So last night, after 4 years of wanting to do this, and this deck, I thought I was pushing for it to get ready at the beginning of October. So what am I like? I'm like 2.5 months into being ready for it to be here.
Yeah.
And so last night I got to go on Facebook and do a live sale, and I sold like 20 decks. It was crazy.
So on Instagram you announced it or something?
On Facebook.
Facebook?
But on Instagram too. But Facebook is where it happened, which is just like in the LuLaRoe documentary. I was that lady hawking my side hustle.
Did my wife take this headshot of you on the back?
Let me see.
It's the one with...
No.
Okay.
My hair... The time your wife took my headshot, My hair was at my absolute longest, wildest. And I just remember she would take a picture, sigh, come in, like try and like flatten my hair out.
It's a great looking headshot of you because you got your paints out. It's very iconic. It's probably like if when you die, that's the picture they should have of you. Sometimes I think about
her
that.
name. Say her name out loud. It's written right there.
Huh?
Do you see it written on the side of the photo?
The person that took the Nitya Prezlowski.
She's a photographer on Beacon Hill. She's really great. She took that photo.
So you use these in therapy?
I have probably 30 decks that rotate in and out of my therapy practice.
That you've handmade or
No, that I've bought.
Okay.
So I am a consumer. If you've seen Kirk's background, he's a consumer of Legos, mailbox or lunch boxes,
books,
action figures. I buy all those things too, but I also have bought tarot decks for years and other oracle decks, and I probably have 30. And they get lost, they end up in the office, they're at the art studio, somebody borrows one, I get it back, and they're just always around. And I am a one card pull person, so for those of you, that's how my deck is really designed, is that each card says the name of the figure and then a major quality that I could inspire.
What's an example of using it in therapy?
So why don't we do it right now? But you have the deck.
Okay.
So shuffle them. Okay. Turn them upside down. Okay. Shuffle them.
I mean, they're too big to shuffle properly.
I know. You know what I mean. Smush them. You can even smush them on the table. Just kind of.
I don't want to hurt them.
This is your deck. This is my gift.
Oh, it's my deck.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. How much do these retail for, by the way?
So it's $50 with shipping.
Wow.
And it's because
that's quite a gift for me.
Paid the whole thing.
I will say
myself.
They smell very earthy. I don't know if that's the ink or something, or it smells like a new car or something.
So ask a question.
I'm going to cut it because I'm a proper dealer. Ask a question out loud.
Yeah, that'll make it more fun.
Will my dog, Obi-Wan Kenobi, be healed from his... or I guess a more open-ended question is, how difficult is it going to be to cure his heartworms, which are stressing us out? Mm-hmm. And then I look at the card. Mm-hmm. The healer.
Hey! See? The cards always know. Your dog's going to be fine. Your dog's in good hands.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, so this is a pretty complicated... Of the cards I looked at, this is one of the most complicated ones there.
Yeah, some of them really came through as capital P paintings. Some of them are images of the cards, and some of them are soul revealing parts of myself.
Is this a capital P?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The healer, the hermit.
You can't even really see the healer at first, I see the roots, and then what looks to be some baubles that are growing on trees, and then I'm like, oh, there's a healer. There's a figure in there. Mm-hmm. When I think of that, I think Princess Mononoke, the forest spirit emerging from the darkness and the moisture. Yeah. Okay.
So I've done my job.
All right. Well, that makes me feel better.
Yeah. So now whenever you feel that anxiety, and are you doing the meds yourself, or do you have to go in the vet to do the meds?
Meds ourselves. Yeah. I mean, it's mainly Stacy, or I should say only Stacy. She takes care of the dogs in that way, but it's a huge, we just don't know. And we're both traumatized by our last dog, Chloe, who had seizure disorder for years and years, and about once a month, sometimes more frequently, she would have 2 or 3 days where she just seizure after seizure after seizure. And
it's terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, if you've ever observed any animal having a full-on seizure, it is one of the most violent, traumatic things to watch, especially if it's someone you're caring about. And then, Chloe didn't even know what was happening. She'd wake up and she'd be all kind of weird, and then the meds would make her weird. And every time she had a seizure, she would poop and pee and hit herself, and sometimes she'd bite her tongue, and there'd be blood everywhere and saliva. Like it would, and all you could do was just sit there and like watch and try to get her not to hit her head or something. And then we would have to take her to the hospital sometimes when they got really bad, and it was just like, it was years of this, out of like 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
Different meds, different diets, different vets, different lifestyles, and sometimes it would get better and sometimes it'd get worse. And, it was just like every day was kind of like, okay, well, should we try this? And da. And then one day she had a huge one in the middle of the night, and we took her to the hospital, and then the vet or the hospital called us the next day and said she died in observation, and we're like, what do you mean? Like, how? What did you like? Who knows? But the impression I got was, because they don't have them running around in the hospital, they're in they're in cages. And so I had this thought of like, were you paying attention? I mean, I don't know, but there just didn't seem to be an explanation. There didn't seem to be like someone was right there. She went into a seizure, and then she, I don't know. I just never heard. It just felt like if she were home, would she still be alive? And I mean, it was just, it was so much pain. And so as Obi-Wan goes through Kenobi, I mean, it's so funny because like his real name is Kenobi, but we call him Obi, and so sometimes I forget that his name is Kenobi because we call him Obi, and then I think his name is Obi-Wan, but it's like, it's not. But there's 2 Obis in Obi-Wan Kenobi. It begins and ends with Obi.
I never thought about that before.
Right? Obi-Wan
Kenobi.
Obi. Anyway, so we call him Obi, and he is going into these treatments, and you can die from heartworm as a dog, and you could have it never go away. Like you could do all the treatments, and it just starts to eat away at your energy, and you start losing weight, and obviously it has heart problems, and it could have all these issues, and it's just, and he's pretty young. And for those who don't know, he is adopted from Louisiana, and we don't really have heartworm problems in Seattle with dogs because it's a mosquito-borne parasite, and we just don't typically have that in Seattle, but it's all over the place in the south and the swampy, southeast. And so when he came up here, they tested him for heartworm, and he was negative. And then anyway, so it's nice to know that the healer is watching over me.
Yeah, so you might want to. So in this modern age, you could take a picture of it and put it on your phone. You could do some more research on the healer card. You could photocopy it and put it up on the refrigerator, or put it on his med bottle, so that every time you kind of went through the stress of like, oh God, we're doing this again. Just remember, like, there's some serious healer energy present here. It's not just you. It's the doctor who prescribed it. It's all of those people who are wishing your dog well. I mean, that's the thing about the archetypal cards, is that there's huge amounts of energy in that Jungian way, that we're not alone in these experiences. And I think that's why tarot is so popular, and so popular right now, is that we're so lost in our own pain. And tarot has 500 years of saying, meh, we've been here before.
Yeah, interesting. I think I will. I'll put that card by we have a little med station in the kitchen. And I think that's another kind of trauma that's being triggered. It's like we have another permanent, because with Chloe, there was a permanent medicine station for her. You had to have all the meds and the pill pockets and the various different vials of this and that. And it just is this visual reminder of like, oh, we're back here again. And Obi's so young. He's like 2. How old is he? I mean, we got him adopted, so we don't really know exactly how old he is, but I think he's 3 now. it's pretty young. And then you think, oh, are we in it for another 10 years with this dog?
I've heard that heartworm, they're pretty good at fixing it these days.
Yeah. But it's months of,
I know. It is
meds.
Yeah.
It's months. All right, let's take a break. We get back more emails. Hey, deserving listeners, as y'all know, I am constantly recommending that people go to therapy. We all need therapy from time to time. Well, one of the options available that is definitely worth checking out is BetterHelp. If you're looking for a therapist, I would give it a try by going to betterhelp.com/Kirk. Make sure you use the promo code Kirk because you get 10% off your first month, and it really helps us out. As you watch these videos, I know many of you have been motivated to find your own therapist, which is great because you deserve it. And I know also that it can be hard to find a good fit, find the right one for you. Well, one of the options available in terms of your shopping is to go to betterhelp.com/Kirk. I've been told you can start communicating with your therapist in under 24 hours. You can message your counselor at any time. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions. I've also been told that it's often less expensive than in-person therapy, and you should know that this service is available to clients worldwide. So go to betterhelp.com/Kirk to get 10% off your first month today. All right, we're back from the break. So next email from an anonymous listener. She says, I'm a mother of 2 teenage children. Both of my children are on the more sensitive side like myself. When they were younger, I was able to provide a safe place to feel their emotions. I feel as they are getting older, I am struggling with how to support their emotions, especially sadness and crying. My son has always been harder to comfort, and I find his emotions can shut him down, and he locks everyone out. I'm not sure what my place is in comforting and supporting him when I hear him crying. When I approach him, he puts up a barrier and does not want to talk or even wants me around. I am also in therapy and have just uncovered a deep sadness I feel around not being seen and not being understood by others. I have dealt with this by putting up barriers and not sharing my emotions because I don't think people can handle them. I'm terrified I am repeating a pattern and I want to provide the emotional support he needs. I love him so much, it hurts me when he is in pain. I'm unsure if I should back off or push through. Rebecca, what do you think?
Well, with teens, they may not want their parents at this time and they feel super crappy. And that's been really hard in the pandemic because they don't have their friends or teachers or coaches or the kids in the drama club or all the other places where they could get support. But the thing with teens I've noticed is the more you kind of, lean in, they pull back. So sometimes like parallel play is good to go out and say like, let's go out to your favorite restaurant, or nowadays, let's order in whatever you want. But just to do something this is how I handle it at my house. Like do something that makes them know I feel that they're really, really special. I'll watch their favorite show with them for the 500th time.
What's his favorite show?
Last Airbender.
Oh.
We've watched it all the way through 5 times.
Okay.
And then there was also this really weird time at the lowest point of the pandemic, right before the vaccines came out. And we were a queer household, and we know J.K. Rowling's is complicated for many queer people. He wanted to watch all of the Harry Potter movies, and so we did.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you can join them in maybe something they delight in and maybe not focus in on their pain, they might not have words for their pain, and they might not want to share it with you, but you might offer them a different experience.
Rebecca might cough every now and then, and that's okay.
I'm getting over laryngitis, everyone.
So, side question, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but what do you think of J.K. Rowling or Rowling? I always forget how it's pronounced.
I think that people in power should use their power for good. I don't know why she's gotten so crazy about trans folks and feeling like somehow she's projecting the gender of womanhood by excluding trans-bodied people. They're the people that most need her support. So the whole thing has been incredibly painful. And in my queer community, there is no question. Like, there is no Harry Potter stuff up in my office, at my home. It is, I know with my queer friends, it is not something, like when my son decided to watch all the Harry Potter movies, I had to explain, like, I know all of our politics right now, but we're in the middle of a pandemic and I'm going to do whatever my son wants to do. We're watching all the Harry Potter movies. But people were like, oh, you're letting him do that? It was like, these are desperate times, people. We're going back to Hogwarts. So yeah, it's been very, very strange.
So for the listener who doesn't understand it, what happened?
She has been very vocal on Twitter and whatever other social media platforms that she has, in being very clear that she believes that the term woman belongs only to someone who is, assigned female at birth, and that there is no other way to be a woman, and that she is very clear that anyone else.
So a trans woman isn't, you can't call her a woman.
Right.
That's what she's saying?
Yeah. Another term for this is TERF, trans exclusionary feminist. Yeah, but I mean, it's someone who has so much power in the world and has so much influence over an entire generation of children. I'm just kind of confused over what she's gaining.
Yeah, I remember this came out, it was a couple years ago or something, and I didn't follow it closely, but the thing that I concluded based on the very little information that I saw was that she seems completely tone deaf to the realities of what trans people go through, and could have said, I mean, I remember there were things that she was saying. I was like, okay, you know, as a woman, you can feel that way and say things, but why do you have to stomp on other people why like, and then anyway, so I just find that a lot of that kind of talk is I don't know. Do you think she's just like unaware or opinionated in a weird way, or like what's going on with her? Because she doesn't need to be talking about.
Yeah.
No one cares what she thinks about this. So why is she ruining her career to some extent by even talking about it?
Yeah, I don't know. It's been like watching a very painful train wreck, and I don't know why she can't stop. And
but why would she even start?
I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of people that are very opinionated and feel like they have to share their opinion and that people should agree with them. And when they don't, I don't know if it's cultural to her family, if this is the way that people talked in her family, or... I
mean, probably. I mean, the progressive understanding of queer people is rare. So I would assume that her parents didn't have a progressive understanding of trans people.
I mean, it's just interesting because, as a single mother, I'm just imagining, what if she was probably as vilified as a single mother,
right? And
probably understood that people didn't understand how hard she was working just to be her and get by and didn't need any of their opinions or troubles. But this is her mountain that she's going to die on.
Getting to your question, anonymous listener, about kids and crying, and you have a teenager who is... Okay, so what you're telling me, anonymous listener, is you grew up being silenced about your emotions, and you learned that you shouldn't burden other people with your emotions, and so you suffer in silence and don't burden other people. You don't maybe express yourself very often because you don't feel like anyone cares, or you don't feel safe to do that. I think you're speculating that maybe that kind of rubbed off on your kids. It's hard to know that. Certainly your teenage son can incur a lot of messages from society that have nothing to do with you at school, so on, that maybe you did everything right and he is damaged by society, which it happens all the time. So it's hard to know, but these kind of things do tend to get passed down. The thing that I'll say is parenting is very difficult. And if you can get away with, as I always say, if you can parent your kid and they only need 5 years of therapy, then you're one of the best parents on the planet. So maybe you kind of messed them up a little bit in this way. And when I talk to parents, I say that, it just sort of let go of this notion like, oh no, I messed them up. It's like, you've already messed them up. It's done. It's fine. It's not fine, but it's like, it's normal to mess your kids up a little bit. You also raised them and fed them and loved them and, gave them secure attachment. But your personality issues that were derived from your childhood, your children interfaced with that heavily throughout their life. Your issues were the primary thorn in their side from the time you were born, and there's really no way to avoid that, and that's okay. Just sort of like release yourself from this Disneyland version of what parenting is supposed to be. It's got its pros and its cons, but so there's that. The other thing is that as Rebecca's saying, teenagers, sometimes it's just like you push and they pull away. There's various reasons for that, and there's a fine line, and I think this is a common issue with parents, and that, whether it's your kid crying or just something where you see a problem with your kids and you want to interface and help, and you want some kind of back and forth where they can say, I feel bullied at school. And you're like, oh no. That's unfair. Would you like to cry about it? Yes, I would. And the kid cries, and, you comfort them, like the old days when they were 7 and they managed to do that more freely. As teenagers, they just lock themselves in their room and go on TikTok or something. And you're just like, what's happening? I don't understand. And there's a bit of a grieving process of losing that younger child that you have to go through and adjusting to that. Having said that, I commend you, anonymous listener, for saying but I don't want to do what he wants me to do, which is to ignore him. I don't want to do that. And as Rebecca's saying, well, maybe do other things, go in through the back door instead of the front door, meaning that maybe you don't talk directly about it, but you do other things so that he can feel like he has someone in his corner. And there's a lot of ways to do that. And I would talk with a lot of parents about this. It's like, I see that you are worried about your kid because they're suffering at school and they come home and cry. You've tried to interface about that topic. They don't want to go there. There are other ways to comfort your child that have nothing to do with that topic being explicitly talked about, right? That can make a child feel supported and loved about that issue, even though you literally never talk about that issue. And as a therapist that worked with kids, I learned that really well, because I would try to say, the parents would say, his mom died last year. And I would say, would you like to talk about your mom dying? No. And I would try all these different angles of moms and death and grief and, different little things. And it's like, it's not happening. And then I would just do something else. And I would learn that if I created a space, we would be talking about their mom, but not explicitly talking about their mom. We could be watching a YouTube video and they're watching a video about, or a music video where there's a lot of anger in it. And I wouldn't know for sure, but it's like, I wonder if he's angry and we're watching this video. He's telling me something through this. And so I would attend to that anger, thinking that we're talking about his anger that his mom died, that kind of stuff. The other thing is that I would consider modeling for him. He's crying in his room, and you approach him or something. He's like, I don't want to talk about it. If he'll let you, you sit next to him, close enough that, it doesn't bother him. And you talk about your own sadness and your own repression and your own feeling like a burden, and just be like, look, this is something, and this is stuff I would do with kids in therapy. I'd be like, look, I know you don't want to talk about it. It's totally fine. And, far be it from me to force anyone to talk about what they want to talk about. But I just want to say a few things. And you can listen or not listen. Totally up to you. By the way, I did this a lot as a therapist with teens. You know what I mean? Because it was just like, I don't have a lot of time, so I got to do something. And so I would say, take it or leave it. But when I get sad, when I was sad at your age, and really my whole life, I frequently feel like I just don't want anyone to bother me. I want to just cocoon. I don't want to cry. I don't want to cry in front of other people. And I sometimes wonder why that is. Why is it that I just want to be left alone all the time? And there's certainly nothing wrong with temporarily want to be left alone, but I kind of feel like I was given a message somewhere along the lines that I shouldn't bother people with my sadness, or it's embarrassing to be sad, or sometimes I was sad about something that I felt like bad about, like it was my fault in the first place, and I didn't want to talk about that, and I just wanted it to go away. And when other people saw me, it sort of made it real or something, and I was just too much for me, and I still kind of struggle with that. And I might even cry in this moment and try to go to that place for myself. And, I would say 80% of the time, the kid would be like, well, anyway, let's play Uno or something. But some of the time, it would seem to get through. But I think all the time it kind of got through. It was something I could do. And it doesn't work, because a lot of the reasons why kids, really anyone, holes up like that is they feel threatened. And the threat often is, I'm dealing with a lot, and I feel like if I do something, I'm going to make it worse, or I'm going to make a fool out of myself.
Right. I think kids are so afraid of being judged even more.
Right.
That's a huge part of it. And I will say that there are times that I've said to my kid, like, I'm coming in.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry if you don't want it, but here we go.
Right.
And I'm just going to lie next to you, and I'll just be here.
Right.
And, we have pets, so that makes it perfect. So, okay, now all the dogs are in the bed, too. And we're just in this hard time.
Right.
And teenagers, it's so, I heard this insane statistic that 1 in 5 teenagers has experienced the death of someone close to them recently. It's such a hard time. You're losing so much. You're giving up so much. There's all these huge expectations.
Yeah.
And the feelings are really, really big. And just because, as someone who spent most of my teenage years alone in my bedroom, listening to the first side of Suzanne Vega's first album, not even turning the record over to listen to the other side, and making really sad collages all by myself, I can tell you that most people make it to the other side of that big pain.
Mm. And is that the one with
no, or that's Tom's Diner. This is the one with Marlena on the Wall.
How's that one go?
I won't sing. I won't torture everybody.
This is like before My Name is Luca.
Yes, this is the album. Much, much better. This is the album before that.
And Left of Center.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all right, Rebecca. I have so many more emails to talk with you about, but we've ran out of time. So
I'll be back.
Let's do that again another time. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because
it's hard out there. So we're rooting for you. Me and this guy over there.